السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وأسعد الله أيامكم جميعا بكل خير، وحياكم الله في الحلقة 90 من نحو مسكن ميسر ومستدام. اليوم هي التغطية الثالثة والأخيرة لمكتب تروب وبعض أعماله التي اطلعنا عليها سابقا وسوف نطلع عليها اليوم. هذا مشروع أيضا يعاد ترميمه، ما زال في بداية لمساته الفنية، قريب أيضا من المكتب، سنشاهده اليوم سوية. وإذا بقيتم معي نهاية الحلقة في مجموعة أسئلة راح أطرحها عليه مهمة للمعماريين وللمجتمع بشكل عام، نبي نسمع رأيه فيها وتوجيهاته فيها. وإن الله كتب وصار في عندنا فرصة، قابلنا فريق العمل المتبقي وصورناهم وشفنا وش تخصصاتهم وش عندهم من علوم غانمة للجميع. ابقوا معنا نهاية الحلقة والله الموفق. هذا هو المشروع. طبعا زي ما تعرفون مشاريع القديمة ما يكون فيها التكنولوجيز الحديث من أنواع التكييف ومن أنواع أسلاك الإنترنت والتليفون، ويمكن حتى بعضها يكون الكهرباء يمكن لم يصلها. فتجد أهم شيء يقومون فيه هنا وأكبر تشالنج يواجهونه كيف يضيفون هذه الخدمات بدون ما يزيلون أي عنصر من عناصر المبنى المعمارية أو الإنشائية، يحافظون على كامل المشروع بالكامل. إذا بغوا يضيفون شيء يا عن طريق الأسقف يا يضيفون حوائط إضافية على الجدران.
They had two big houses until they started looking at both. So that's why this is the outside wall of the Victorian house. This house doesn't have its own wall. It pushes up against the other house. And that's when we put the render off the wall, or the cement off the wall. This is the outside wall of the old house. Okay, so we come in here.
يقول هذا أصلا كان جدار خارجي لأحد المشاريع، ثم أضافوا هالبيت عليه، فعشان كذا حافظوا عليه زي ما هو.
This is how we found it. Hasn't had much done to it. There's two pair of bifold doors, beautiful doors, open and closed. We cleaned them up and they look very nice and attractive. The old fireplaces have been taken out. Fireplaces have been taken out to be repaired and restored and brought back. These fireplaces are not rare. There's literally millions of them. They're made in Europe or made in England or Scotland, shipped all over the world. And when you go to the second-hand sort of antique dealer for buildings, you look on the back and you say, "Oh, that's a 516." He said, "You want all the bits and pieces?" And he's got all the bits and pieces, so you can always get them repaired. This is quite a nice building. The floor is good. There's not a lot of termites in it, and generally been kept in quite good condition.
Is it older than the house?
This is a bit older than the one at the end. These ones are built first, and those ones were built second. But it's not only by 5 or 6 years. You know, it's not 100. The ones in the middle are 1830. But they look as though they're 1870. Pine timber work. Okay, so this is a new floor. This is Baltic pine. It's a special pine where there's no joints. See, it's got a tunnel groove joint at the end, so all the boards fit in. Sometimes it's secretly nailed with a nail that shoots in between and pulls it down. Sometimes you can see the nails. This is very expensive timber, imported from New Zealand. So we can go downstairs and start there. As I said before, be careful. This is a building site. Watch where you put your feet. Don't tread on any nails. This is the kitchen, and in this building, the owner, with with ourselves has kept everything intact. They have not changed very much, they've just made some openings. But you can see the way the old ceiling has been made. These are bits of wood cut from willow, the tree wood of willow, with a special tool. And they scrape the pieces up and they make this flexible piece of batten, and they nail it all the way through, and then they push plaster into it. The plaster goes up, bubbles over the top, goes hard, and that's what holds it in the ceiling. These ceilings are very prone to falling down when they get wet. They're hard to repair, but we have a special system where we push up from underneath the level, and then on the top they pour, makes it activates the lime, and it changes the mixture so that it goes back to hard and glues it all back, and then we just plaster over and we preserve the ceiling. A lot of people don't like to spend that money, and sometimes we simply put battens on, leave the ceiling there and replace it with a plaster ceiling.
So why blustering?
By plastering.
Yeah. Is this
Plaster is traditional.
Oh, so this is okay. We can add bluster to all.
We can add a sheet of plaster board, you know, gypsum plaster board with paper, what they call a drywall in America. As long as we preserve the underneath, some cases we can just full ceiling it. Much preferred to put the original ceiling back. But for instance here, it would be so labour intensive and you might not find enough. The balcony is made up of solid sandstone slabs that are all about 15 centimetres.
هذا حق حامل جابوا سلابة من الحجر
And that's the finish. The sandstone would not have come from here, it probably came from a quarry somewhere about 4 or 5 kilometres away, brought in a horse and cart, the sandstone on the back, and 2 men would have lifted that sandstone big and brought. To hold the bricks together, and then they put another layer up, and the timber sometimes has a strip of steel over the top so that it's all tied together. So this is 1870s. The building is quite sophisticated. You know, it's not primitive. They knew what they were doing. The regulations in Australia started in the late 1890s, and then they were consolidated in around 1900, and by 1920s there was legislation in place that covered all aspects of building. You know, how wide the walls were, how big the timber should be, and then each few years the regulations have been changed and altered and brought up to date. So I gave the boys the National Construction Code, which is universal, as I said to them, if you went to America, if you went to Britain, if you went to... And if you want to look over here, is this a modern house or is it an old house? Have a look at the wall. Definitely a modern house, right? It's got internet and electricity and television cabling and Wi-Fi, air conditioning, all in the panels. So we hide it in that part of the building so you can't tell where it is. The air conditioning coming down for our air conditioner. If we come out the back, now, this is a little laundry area. See, we've rebuilt the new timber where the timber was rotted. This is Australian hardwood, and this timber is pine, all done to the same detail. So this is a reconstruction. Here's the air conditioning coming in. Redone our walls. So, excuse me, we'll have to go in a few minutes.
والأبواب يوم فتحناها حطينا أعتاب خرسانية عشان نحمي البلوك.
under all the walls that are outside are new footings, underpinnings being put in. So all the things the client pay for you can't see. The thing you can see is the woodwork and the paint. But what makes the building stay up, what makes it waterproof, he doesn't see it. He just puts the money out of his bucket into the never-ending, bottomless pit of restoration. It doesn't stop here. But out here is quite interesting. This is our outer side. Now be careful, I don't think there's any right there. No. Watch where you walk. So, on a mirror of that building. So there'll be two little buildings the same. You're not putting glass like here, it's going to be open. But I did this building in 2015, 2012 to 2015. Different client. Here we're going to have a similar building, a little garden, and some sun shading, and all this garden is going to be made into something very attractive. These walls were painted, and they strip all the paint off and repair all the walls. This is a concrete slab, but because the ground here is filled, it's not solid ground, it's just old soil put back, held against the retaining wall. These have to have very deep footings and piers. Over here is an archaeological discovery now covered up. But down the top, this is 1820s, maybe earlier, like the beginning of the colony. There was a big wall that went through here. This wall we had to tell the Heritage Branch about it when they dug it up. So they stopped work in this area for 6 months while we had to write reports on it, to identify it, and when we've done all that we'll cover it up and leave it in the ground forever for someone else to dig up. This still is building our little room, and it's got a nice pyramid type ceiling, copper roof, and all open space. Which is a very rare timber nowadays. It used to be, Australia City used to be all over the countryside, right in the, from 1800s through to the 1900s. They chopped down every Australian cedar tree till there were none left. They were giant, wide, big trees, so this beautiful hardwood that's absolutely no knots or veins in it. It's highly prized. They exported it all over the world and then gone. Now they're growing back.
هنا بيضيفون مساحة.
Now this is like, if you look in here, this is the lift. So here's another building we've done with a lift. So this is a 1870s building with a contemporary lift, and it's got a stone wall lining. It didn't really always have a stone wall. We'll tell you, we'll be gone in 15 minutes. Okay? Yep, no worries. You do the check that we're here before we go. Someone's had a hole in the building. Okay, so we're not locking that over. So here's our services duct. The white ones are air conditioning.
هذا سمنت شيت.
The yellow ones
مع
are the
الفايبر.
power to the air conditioning.
سمكته 5
This is the
ملي
house power.
عشان يقاوم
This is the
الموية.
communications. You've got You've got wired, even though there's Wi-Fi. A building like this, you'd need Wi-Fi on every floor, otherwise it won't go through it. So, we've got to have probably Wi-Fi on each floor. And then it goes to the fibre optical cable in the street, which Australia's just having this massive wiring up of optical fibre cable all over the country, which is costing billions of dollars. It's just a little veranda at there, no enclosure, just the same veranda. And of course the view is just beautiful and spectacular. You saw the view in the other house, this is better. Push up into between the wall, the ceiling and the cavity. The one disappears into the hole and two go side by side. So you have to duck under, but if you want to look at the view, that's the view.
هذه الإطلالة.
From here, you can have a look from here. It's just fantastic. Yeah. This is why people pay $5 million or more. They buy the view. Then they spend many millions more doing it up. But every few of these has the view. Some have, sadly, they spend $5 million and they get a big column from the bridge in front of their house. So you can see bits and pieces of the little kitchen, bathroom, and they were poor people, and now the very rich people, maybe 15 people lived in this place in the last 40 years. They lived here in little flats. Now, just one family lives here and lives in the whole building, just 3 or 4 people.
And you're going to conserve that?
No, we're going to get rid of that.
You're going to remove it?
We're going back beyond that period.
Okay.
Well, this is the original skirting boards, which these boards are in fact American redwood. And because the timber in Australia was very hard, you believe this is very hard, machines weren't able to cut it unless it was green. Softwood was imported from America, Oregon, Douglas fir, Baltic.
هنا كان في حمام ومطبخ. هذا طبعا لأنه إضافة جديدة راح يزيد لونه.
This room is now the builder's workshop. He has his beautiful DeWalt saw, which this is called a docking saw. It just cuts. It's a bench saw. He can push things through and cut it. All the architrave's been taken off to be preserved and restored.
So it's not restored here, it's restored somewhere else.
Somewhere else, cleaned, brought back and painted. So here's a door under restoration where they haven't taken away. They're taking it back to what's good paint, and then they'll fix up all the holes. They'll put wooden plugs in the holes and they'll repaint it beautifully. They'll put glass back into that panel, and you see that. Okay, so think about when we went last week to number 19. Last Friday went to number 19. Number 19 looked like this before, and so this is halfway through the restoration, and this is a good one. This is not a really bad building.
So Mariam do a good job, right?
What's that?
Mariam, let's say design Mariam. She did design a draft,
الفريمز لأنها تاريخية حافظون عليها يصلحونها في مكان ثاني بعدين يرجعونها. شوفوا كيف الأرضية.
And then when they sand it down, it'll come up like new. And once again, the ceiling is all being repaired. Now we like this.
الخشب القديم فكوه عشان يعالجون الحشوة بعدين يرجعون يركبون الخشب يصنفرونه، يعالجونه، ويستخدمون الأرضية مرة ثانية. ما فيها تغيير، ارمي وكسر وركب واحد جديد.
So in all the ones that I do, we keep this in the bathroom, so it makes it feel like it was meant to be there, and the rooms are divided up so that they look nice and everybody loves it.
هذا هو الصوف الصخري.
And then when they sand it down, it'll come up like new. And once again, the ceiling is all being repaired. Now we like
هذا
this.
الخشب القديم فكوه عشان يعالجون الحشوة، بعدين يرجعون يركبون الخشب، يصنفرونه، يعالجونه، ويستخدمون الأرضية مرة ثانية. ما فيها تغيير، ارمي وكسر وركب واحد جديد.
So in all the ones that I do, we keep this in the bathroom, so it makes it feel like it was meant to be there, and the rooms are divided up so that they look nice and everybody loves it.
هذا هو الصوف الصخري.
The man that owns this mother
يفكون
is going to
الخشب
come and sleep here.
ويحشون المحل الصوف الصخري هذا.
So she's a lovely lady, and she knows how to build, right?
اسمها إيرث.
Marie is she's built lots of houses, and she's like the project manager. She tells us what to do. She's really good. She has terrific taste, and we do all the design and pattern, and then she's going to do.
هذه غرفة ستدي على هالإطلالة.
See how many cables are hidden. So this is sort of like your body. It's got all the veins and arteries and things going into it, and no one would realise how it's put together. They don't realise when you come in and it's all finished, like Mike's house down the road. There's a plug here, there's a thing there, and you think, oh, you don't even notice it. But to make it work, it has all this sort of.
شايفين هالترس هذا مخلي الجدار هذا كله كنتليفر طاير في الهواء. الجولة الآن بقابل الموظفين نسألهم بعض الأسئلة، وبعدين نجلس مع تزمن نسأله 8 أسئلة اللي احنا مجمعينها معانا. So, could you please state your name and your degree and where are you from?
I'm Eleonora. I'm from Florence, Italy, and I have a degree in Florence in architecture and engineering.
It's a bachelor degree, right?
No, it's a master degree.
It's a master degree. How many years is your bachelor? How many years is your master?
It's 3 plus 2.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And what exactly you are majoring in?
Pardon?
What's your major? What's your specialized in?
I really don't know actually here in Australia. Yeah. Usually in Italy I'm specialized in interior design. Yeah, and a little bit more in the creative field.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe here in Australia I'm specialized 3 years.
You worked here, and before that you worked in France?
In Italy. Yeah.
In Italy.
And here with Tropman, I think it's my first year here in Tropman. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And from your experience, what would make architecture better? Why architecture for you first?
It's, for me, architecture is quite important because it's the way that architecture is something that affects people, because people live in something that I don't know, is in some space, and the detail that the detail of what makes architecture is the detail.
Mm-hmm.
I think you, as an architect, you have to be able to create some space to affect in a better way the people that live inside. And this is what I think is architecture.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time. And could you please state your name and where are you from and what's your degree?
Hi, my name is Crystal and I'm originally from Malaysia and I did my degree, Masters in Architecture from University of Tasmania in Australia.
How many years your degree?
My degree was so I did 2 years of bachelor's, and 1 year bachelor's and 2 years of master's.
So the total is 3 years.
Yeah.
And what exactly are you majoring in? Your specialty?
Right now, in this office, we specialize in heritage, a lot of heritage work. So we do heritage conservation, restorations, and adaptive use to heritage buildings in Sydney.
And what's your part on it? What's exactly the part that you think, this is me?
Wow. It's a very challenging role, especially in this office, because we have to do a lot of investigation on historical items, heritage fabric, and determine if we can help the client keep, or our role really is to help the client in maintaining and making all this heritage fabric good. So I think that sort of role, or my role in this office, is it's very fulfilling because you are giving back to heritage in a way.
So why is architecture?
Sorry?
Why architecture? Why did you choose architecture?
Why did I choose architecture? That's a very, very interesting question. Well, I did not intend to study architecture in the first place. I did not know what I was going to study, but thought of why don't I just give architecture a go. But learning architecture and doing architecture as a job is very, very different. If I were to pick, I would actually prefer to study architecture because there's a lot of knowledge that you can learn, and it's never ending, architecture, especially in heritage. There's so much to learn, still so much to learn. But like I said, working in this job, it's very fulfilling because you are helping the clients, you're helping buildings become better.
Well, thank you so much for your time. So, Mr.
I'll just turn this off.
Okay, Mr. Jasmine, what is architecture to you?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Exactly.
So architecture is everything in the built environment, I suppose. We always had, it was very popular to have architecture without architects. That was the thing of the 60s and 70s, you know, the discovery of things that didn't have architects. But I suppose architecture is everything in the built environment, from my point of view.
And why architecture? Why did you choose architecture? What about you?
Well, I was always artistic, and I came from a family of engineers. And they thought, this boy should become something. If he can't become an engineer, I think he should be an architect. I wanted to be a veterinary scientist, you know, a veterinary doctor. But my marks weren't high enough. So I chose architecture.
Wow.
You know, because it was, firstly, I'm good at.
Keep it going.
And I was always artistic. I mean, that's just a gift, you know, from God. You don't become artistic. You are artistic, you know. And I always loved engineering because I was brought up in engineering workshops with, you know, in factories and all sorts of things. So I sort of had a love of how to put things together as well, which was good because I did well in engineering subjects at university.
That's good. Okay, in your opinion, what do you think is the role of architect in our society? What should he do?
Well, architects have a different view of what they should be doing. I think architects respond to a patron, either it might be a grand patron like a city or a very wealthy person or an institution, but theirs is a response to a requirement for somebody else. And architects then have the duty to add to the environment, to answer the question, what should I do here? But the architect does that.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't create. What he creates is at the behest of somebody else. And that's the irony of the architect's thinking, is they imagine that they've actually invented it. They forget the very first bit. Someone came to you with the idea or the money. I came from, though not wealthy myself, through an unfortunate occurrence, my father didn't make any money. He came from a very wealthy family, and I always thought I didn't want to be helped by that family. I wanted to make it on my own. But as I've grown in life, I've realised that maybe I should have, because architecture relies on knowing people with money, knowing people with interests, knowing people with work, knowing other architects, and so nowadays we spend our time networking, on the internet. We make sure we talk to people, we go to conferences and functions, and then generally we speak to people who know people, and that kind of thing is important. In the good old days, when I was young, architects, someone said, well, speak to him, his son's an architect, and that sort of generated a host of work. In my case, I found a client, I left, I worked for a larger company, I left, and they followed me. And everybody in that company left, and they did other things, and it was a big bank. They left and started other banks, and I followed each path until I had a network of banking clients, which was very good. I enjoyed that.
It's a good experience actually too. What would you recommend for someone who would like to study architecture? Would you recommend that?
Would I recommend it? Well, I think you don't know when you start, and I think and there's a new publication out now from our institute that talks about all these people who study architecture but did something else. And I think if you study architecture and become an architect but don't ever get registered, there are so many doors that the methodology of thinking opens to you. You can become a project manager, you do all sorts of things, but to become an architect requires artistic level of skill, certainly, mathematics, spatial understanding, engineering, and the ability to put things together. And my school teacher said, you'll never become an architect because your school books are so untidy. Well, I'm still untidy, and I'm still an architect.
Can you tell us about running an architecture office?
Running an office?
Yeah.
Well, we're outside talking about it, aren't we? I'm doing the bills today, and the bills are often the most important thing so the office can run. Lots of great architects, or who were going to be great architects. You'll never succeed if you don't like your client, and some clients are unlikable. So there was one thing I learned, I went to a course once about business, and you have to find something in a client that you like. If you don't like the client, then you shouldn't do the job, because architecture is so visceral, it's so part of you and another person, another group, that unless you enjoy their company, their actual personality, it's very hard to do business. You have businesses where you work with a project manager, it's just a hard grind, but somewhere along the line you have to be able to communicate and find a link. It might be a superficial friendship, but there has to be a link, and there has to be a similarity of thought. All other projects will just be a terrible drain on you, and they may not be successful, because you have to work very hard. You have to dedicate yourself to every client. So when I had my own business, and even now, every client thinks that they're the only client. They're always surprised to think they've got other clients, and when they find out, I always have to tell them they are my best client and my only client.
That's
which
good.
Has some modicum of success.
That's good. Will architect ever be rich?
Only if they're born rich.
Good answer.
Some architects do make a lot of money. Right?
If Zaha Hadid herself said architect will never be rich, what do you think?
Yes, I think it's not. My sons were encouraged to go into finance and to advertising, and it didn't take them long before they both earned twice as much as I earn now. So architecture is a hard way to make money, and it's hard. It's not easy. It's not. There is no downtime. It's just constant work, and but of course, every time we finish a project, my wife always says to me, "How can you keep going?" And it's so strange, because the next project comes up, and if you're a real architect, I suppose, or someone who's in is sort of artistic, it is always a disappointment that you didn't do well or you didn't get it, but you seem to always have the energy to do another one. And when you don't have the energy to do another one, I suppose you should stop. Sometimes you do get worn out though, don't you? I mean, you're an architect too, goodness me, how can I keep going? And I guess I love it, and that's the thing.
That's the reason. Yeah, you're right. In your opinion, how can we make our housing or future housing sustainable and affordable? How can we reduce the cost of housing? How can we make it more affordable? It's very expensive.
I think there's a problem in life, isn't it? If you make it simple, then simple and attractive, I think you have to lower your expectation of the amount of space you need in life. When you have a lot of space, a lot of redundant space, that means you've got a lot of money. To have redundancy, you want to be efficient, then that's a reduced amount of money required to live efficiently. I think it's satisfaction within which will make people accept small, sustainable communities.
That's the shortest and the best answer I have ever had on this question. Thank you so much, Tasman, for all the time and help that you gave and support. And hopefully in the future, since I'm here, we're going to meet a lot and we're going to talk a lot and we're going to learn a lot of things from you. Hello, could you state your name and where are you from and your degree, please?
Okay, so my name is Nika Javadi. I'm originally from Perth and I studied a Masters of Architecture, so I have a Masters of Architecture.
How many years?
So in Australia that takes about 5 years. At the time when I was studying, now it might take a bit longer because of the different degree structures.
And what are you majoring in exactly? Your specialty?
My degree was a general architecture degree. Since then I've worked about 3 years in heritage, so I guess you could say I specialise in heritage now.
Why heritage and why architecture first?
Okay, this is a bit of an interesting story, and I don't know if I should call it this way or not, but I will. When I was in uni, I didn't have much interest in heritage. Actually, I had a lot of interest in Indigenous Aboriginal architecture in the Australian landscape. However, graduate was very difficult, so I just applied for everything and everywhere. And Tropman happened to get back to me, and then once I started here, and over time, I began to understand what heritage is, and I grew to like heritage a lot more, and then now I care a lot for heritage. But if you ask me back when I was in uni, I didn't care much for heritage.
And for how long you've been working here?
About just over 3 years, you could say. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. We totally appreciate it. If we have any questions, we'll be back to you. Could you please state your name and your degree and where are you from?
Michele Grande. I'm Italian architect, specialized in heritage.
And what's your degree is master or bachelor?
It's a master architecture.
How many years?
5 years.
5 years. Where did you take it?
In Italy.
In Italy. And why architecture? Why did you choose architecture?
A friend of my family was always kind of my inspiration, and I liked him, I liked his work, and since I was young, I followed.
Okay, why heritage then? What took you from...
Well, why heritage? That probably wasn't a major choice. I think a friend of mine came with me. He was keen to do heritage, just 2 years. Why not?
How your story started, right? And how many years you've been working here in Tropman?
In Tropman, I've been working a bit more than 2 years.
And your experience in general?
I've been working in Italy for 5-6 years, a bit more probably. And after I moved to Australia for 1 year, after I moved back in Europe for 2 years, I worked in Malta. And now I'm back here. It's been now 3 years.
And what exactly is your specialty in?
It's architecture and restoration and conservation. It's under the architecture school, but conservation and restoration.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I totally appreciate it. If we have any questions, we'll be back to you.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name, where are you from, and your degree?
My name is Wan. I'm from Malaysia, and I have a master's in architecture.
And for how many years, the master?
Oh, it's 5 years in total.
5 years in total. And what's your specialty in?
Currently heritage.
So why did you choose architecture, actually?
Have a very strong interest in building, construction. Used to stare at buildings for a very long time, so I decided to
take architecture.
Yeah.
So why heritage?
Why heritage? I have a very strong interest in history, in particular, especially like how some buildings come about. So yeah, I used to like history a lot, so it sort of blends in with architecture, I guess. Yeah.
Would you advise new students to study architecture or take heritage?
Or to take heritage? Well, I think you just have to be passionate about the story behind every building. Then I guess that's when you know you are interested in heritage, I guess.
Thank you so much. نكون غطينا لكم المكتب، غطينا لكم مجموعة من المواقع، وكان الانترفيو جمعت فيه جميع الأسئلة المهمة وطرحتها. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن ينفع بها. الآن بإذن الله تعالى احنا بنسافر نروح لغوانزو، وبإذن الله تعالى إذا في أي أحداث أو أشياء مهمة في غوانزو أصورها لكم. ابقوا معنا هناك تغطية أهم الأحداث من غوانزو. هذا ما بجعبتنا لكم هذا اليوم، وحتى الحلقة القادمة نستودعكم الله. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.